Good morning. My name is Jeremy Martin, and I want to walk through some of the basic usage of CSI Linux. This right here is going to be CSI Linux 2021.2. There's a module in here called PowerUp. What PowerUp is going to do is keep things up to date. So if you download the base 2021.2, then right after you install it, just go ahead and run PowerUp in the terminal window. And that's going to make sure that everything that we're doing is, or everything that you have access to, is what's up to date on the website and up to date with what we're using. So again, pretty simple to keep this system up to date. Couple things, explain some of the content on top. This right here is called the CSI Monitor. It's a conky theme, which is just going to give us some basic information, basic content. We also have HTOP, just to give us a quick view, which is going to be very similar to on Windows Task Manager. So we see the processes, the IDs, how much resources are being used, and so forth. This, however, is called What's My IP. This tells you what the surface IP address is going to be and what your underlying Tor system IP address is going to be. So CSI Linux is running off a base Ubuntu system of 20.4 LTS, or long-term service, or long-term support. But we are running Tor. So we're using Privoxy, SOX5, and a couple other proxies that you can get access to. Stay on the surface web, but still route certain traffic through Tor. And that's, again, your basic mechanics. But right now, I'm on 98 address. I'm in Colorado. And then my Tor is actually going through Amsterdam in Netherlands. So this is an easy way to troubleshoot to see if you have internet access and if you have Tor access. So for example, if you only get the very top line, that means you do have internet. But if you're not getting these two, again, when you commonly start the system, that means Tor might be being blocked. So that could be a potential issue. If you're using the virtual machine, like I am right now, you could VPN out to a different location that may not be blocking Tor. It's kind of a troubleshooting take. But with that said, I'm going to close out of here. So on the bottom, we have common settings. That's kind of like the start menu on Windows. So you have access to pretty much all the stuff you would have access to up here. So we have things broken down into some of the common content within the case management system, including start a case, an app for adding content to your APIs. So there's several tools on here that do require APIs from third-party sites. You can even move the case folder if you need to either an external drive or even over a network interface. For example, if you have a file server and you want to store everything locally there. There's actually a couple different ways of running CSI Linux. The primary reason or way that I'm going to be talking about is having multiple cases inside one environment. Another popular method of using CSI Linux is using each environment or each virtual machine, for example, in its own case. So you can shunt that off, archive it, and then everything within the environment is related to that single case. But this one, we're going to use it as the lighter version to where multiple cases on one instance. You have secure communications. As far as messaging apps, we've added Signal, we've added Telegram. So communicating with either suspect or informant, that's a pretty good way to go. We have Dratus. This is more of a case management situation to where you can either capture all your content within one web interface, or you can have multiple investigators working on certain types of items and sharing that information on a Dratus server. We do have an Android emulator. We've actually added that to the bottom here on the taskbar, which I'll cover those here in a second. Under encryption, we have the encryption tools to be able to encrypt your data or your evidence. We also have remote password cracking if you need it, but again, with investigations, that's kind of a tricky situation. Usually you do not want to do remote cracking. But for offline cracking, there's definitely several different options. We do have Hashcat, we have John the Ripper, and we've also written a specific tool called 2John GUI. What this does is it's just a simple script that looks at all the possibilities for the 2John applications to try to grab the hash out of certain types of files, and then automatically pushes it over to John the Ripper. For example, if you have a RAR file, a zip file, things like that, it'll grab the hash and then push it to John. We do have Ncrack, which is just a competitor to John and Hashcat. Then Offcrack, which usually targets operating systems, can also tie in with rainbow tables. As far as the password builders, we have Cool Dictionary Builder, Cup Dictionary Builder, Steganography, we have a few tools, and a cute little tool called Ciphy. So if you have, let's say, a cipher that you don't necessarily know what it is, this can try to identify it for you, especially if it's just encoding. For example, put it into base64, and it'll identify what the base64 is and decode it for you. For online investigations, we have Domain Recon. And from within the Domain Recon, if you have a specific website or domain, for file search, we can either use MetaGoofil or SpiderPig. That'll try to grab interesting files, information related to that site or domain, and information related to those files. We also have content for getting links from a specific site, Carbon. We have a ton of applications that can get information for that specific domain, or even subdomains, because depending on what kind of recon you are, subdomains that can definitely widen your scope. As far as email, Breach Checker, we have Buster, CheckFi, Email the Phone, but we have Pondernaut and Hate Mail. This also checks to see if they were in some of the common breach leaks. Phone information, you have PhoneInfoga, Phoneify. For SOCMint, we have, of course, the investigation tool, but alias generator, that does is generates some possible names to look for related to a specific suspect. We have Find User and Sherlock. That does tie into our proprietary code as well. We use those tools along with one that we've built to search for potential usernames on social media sites. This one can grab information related to people that are friends to your profile. That's the Facebook information, which you can potentially get phone numbers, things in that aspect. You have GitHub information, which gets common information related to GitHub account, and then also Git leaks for, again, sensitive information that could have been leaked on the GitHub account. We have a couple contents related to Instagram. We have a TikTok video scraper built in now called TikTok Scraper. Tinfoil leak and Twint, so related to Twitter. OSINT frameworks we got installed. We have Merriam, Maltego. This is more for link analysis. Little Brother's pretty good as well, especially if you're trying to look up people overseas in France, things in that area. Spiderfoot's a very large framework. Takes a lot of APIs, web interface, and pretty powerful. And ReconNG. As far as tracking, right now we built our own Wi-Fi location tool, which ties into BSSIDs, SSIDs, and IP addresses. And it's tying in with Wiggle's API and Shodan's API, along with a couple other sources. This one will be growing, and we'll be adding some more content to it to get a little bit more accuracy when it comes down to the geolocation. You have Hidden Eye and Stormbreaker. Again, these do offer some capabilities for potentially tracking somebody based off phishing. Hunchly. This is a browser tool that's tied directly to Chrome. It does require a license, but you can get a 10-day free license directly from their site, see how you like it. But it allows you to do online investigations directly through Chrome and capture the websites you go to, do string searches. It's actually a pretty powerful utility, which helps because it doesn't matter if on surface web or dark web, we can still track our progress. Dark web, we have two different wallets. We have Armory's offline wallet, and then we also do tie into Exodus. Exodus, there's a different way to get in there, but that allows you for multiple types of cryptocurrency wallets, and it's online. Allows us to set up a hidden service and share. Use an onion share. We have BitTorrent. We have BitTorrent Forensics specifically for uTorrent files, but it'll grab some interesting information related to those torrent files. Onion Search. This Onion Search GUI is just a GUI interface for the Onion Search application, which will allow you to search about half a dozen, give or take, search engines on the Tor network. And then it dumps it to the case that you're going to be working on. So you can absolutely, most of these tools, or a lot of these third-party tools especially, you can run in command line, you can run standalone, but we're building GUI interfaces for it so it makes it a little bit easier. So either A, you can fill in the case information and then it ties all the findings to the case on select applications. The other one is going to be where if you cancel, then you go directly to the command line. So you have the option to run it yourself or tie it to the case. And we have cryptocurrency ledger search. So if you have the cryptocurrency wallet number or wallet address, you put it in here, and it supports about half a dozen currency wallets, and then you'll be able to track down the transactions based off that wallet. Now we have with disk forensics, we have imagers. And the difference between forensic imager and a data recovery imager is these take a forensic copy. Data recovery imagers are more for damaged drives. Let's say if you have bad sectors. So these can do reverse imaging where these don't. But this is a GUI imager. And then these are, you have DCF-LDD and DC3DD. DD is also in here, but that's easy to do in command line. But personally, I've been using DCF-LDD for many years, primarily because it gives you a progress of actual transactions. So you know that the image is still copying. As far as data recovery imagers, this is the DD Rescue GUI front end. And again, if you have any sort of bad sectors on a drive, this allows you to image some drives where normal imagers you wouldn't be able to. I've had some really good luck on basic data recovery cases and forensic cases this way. We have file recovery. So these are file carvers. So the more common ones, so the more powerful ones you're looking at are going to be Foremost and Scalpel. And Scalpel is a fork from Foremost. The other ones are pretty targeted directly to the specific file types, like JPEGs. You have file analysis tools, one specifically for RegRipper, for registry on Windows, EXIF tools or EXIF data. We also have this forensic registry editor, which is, again, pretty powerful GUI registry, makes life a little bit easier. Wrote a tool called Image Mounter. This allows you to get some of your forensic images and then mount them as a drive in Linux. So we can do DD copies. We can do the older EnCase expert witness format. We could also do ISO, and at this point VDI, VMDK, and QCOW. So virtual machines. That gives you just access to those systems. We have bulk extractor. Bulk extractor is very similar to Autopsy. It allows you to do a lot of data carving. But then, of course, with Autopsy here, right now we're at version 4.18. This is a full-blown forensic suite for disk forensics. But I also use it for other types of forensics too, because it has pretty good searching capability and the reporting. So tying that in, with mobile forensics, we do have an imager. This right now, however, is tied directly to the ADB and AF Logical, so it does both. So ADB, you're doing a backup, and then with AF Logical, it's pushing an application over to the phone itself, and then allowing you to pull images, text messages, phone calls, things in that area from Android devices. With the iOS imager, this is using the iDevice backup solution. So it's making it similar to an iTunes backup. We have APK tool, which will allow you to rip apart an APK file. So if you're doing any sort of forensics, malware analysis, things in that area, that definitely can help out. As far as rooting phones, you have Hemdall, especially for Samsung. You also have the Android Free Forensics Toolkit. And currently, we do have WhatsApp Messenger 2.0 for data parsing. For SIGINT, you have Kismet for wireless. But we do tie into not just some of the wireless war driving type items, signal analysis. Kismet can also be built into a WIPS, wireless intrusion prevention system, but we also tie into a lot of content for SDR, or software defined radio. So we have, of course, a new radio. We have some scanners. For example, the Jump 1090 is for air traffic control. So think of that as the open radar. So you can see speed, call sign, GPS location of flights. For incident response, we have network forensics and system analysis on malware. We have added this right here. This tool allows basically to check your system for potential risk. Antivirus, this is Clam GUI, and MalDetect. And MalDetect also looks for potential malware in your system. And of course, there's your good old firewall. This is the GUI interface for the uncomplicated firewall. At memory forensics, we have Volatility 3 and Auto Timeliner. And as far as malware analysis, again, we did put the APK tool in here because it does backsmalling. It takes the APK file and then puts that into more of a human-readable interface. We have Ghidra all the way down to Radar 2. Those are going to be for disassembly. We have RetDeck. Viper is more for basically storage of samples. You have Ultimate Packer, or UPX, and Thug Honey Client. This is going to tie directly into a Docker instance, so it's going to ask you what website you want to point it to, basically for testing for potential malware, and then dumps that to the case. But again, it's a script over the Thug Honey Client. And again, you can run that manually if you'd like to. As far as virtualization, it does support VirtualBox VM Player. These work just fine within the virtual machine. KVM is a lower level hypervisor. So there's a lot of data centers are using it. With KVM, it does require that your virtual machine does support virtualization. That usually comes from the computer you're using. So you need to enable virtualization on the computer, and then VirtualBox should see or have the option for pushing the virtualization within the environment. And if it does, this works good. If not, again, that's could be a potential issue based off of the virtual machine does not support virtualization inside of it. But these two work just fine. You also have Docker, Kubernetes, and Lxd. And these are containers versus these are full-blown virtual machine environments. And this ties into, again, forensics. You want to boot up your image to see what the suspect's drive looked like, or you want to do malware analysis. So build a golden image and then see what's changed after it's been run. For threat intelligence, this is where we have some threat maps. So we have cyber threat maps, and those are the pretty threat maps that management always loves to see. We also have terrorist and human traffic resources. So terrorist threat maps, again, Crisis Watch maps related to that specific content. So towards the bottom here, we have CSI Tour Vpn. What this application does is acts very similar to the Tails live Linux system. So it is going to create a virtual VPN adapter, but then routes that VPN adapter through Tor. So we call it Tor VPN because the adapter is a virtual private network adapter, but it is a Tor gateway. So all your traffic within this system goes through Tor. It's relatively straightforward to run. You click on it. You have to put in the password. And then you need to pick the specific interface that you have internet for. So this right here is Andbox. This is basically the Android emulator. So don't pick that one. We want to pick ENP-OS3 in my system. And to verify that, I'm going to scroll up. And I have my network's IP address. So my internet site IP address is going to be on the 10 network. So I'm choosing this. I'm hitting OK. And now I'm going to turn it on. So then at this point, you just wait. So here in about a minute, you're going to see the background change. That's a visual change representation to show that you are no longer on the surface web. So it resets the name server to, instead of going to any sort of internet site, everything's going to localhost. And now I'm going through Berlin. So if you want to test it and verify, you absolutely could click on this, what's my IP address again. This will usually take longer when you're going through Tor, because the first one is your quote-unquote surface address, which is going through a Tor exit relay. The next ones are going to be going through Tor within a Tor. So we're still running a Tor client on the inside of the system, even when we change through Tor VPN. So here, our outside one is going through Amsterdam, and our Tor within a Tor is going through Vienna. Sometimes it does take a while, especially on these last two, because it basically is rebuilding its interface while routing through Tor again. So as long as you get the first one, that's the only thing you really care about, that IP address is different than what you currently have. So now I'm going to close out of that one. Again, pick the specific interface that's associated to your system. And the more virtualization that you install within your system, the more interfaces you're going to see. So if you don't run this AND box, then you're not going to have the AND box adapter. But if you do click on AND box adapter, that's going to install AND box, which is an emulated virtual machine, and then you will see it. Same thing with Docker, same thing with VMware and VirtualBox and the rest of the virtualization. Those are going to add new adapters. So again, double check, make sure that's the same adapter that I went to the beginning. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to turn it off, and the screen's going to go back to the good old black screen. So again, that gives you a virtualization or visualization that you're no longer connected through Tor 100%. If you click on this little arrow on the far right-hand side, you can actually go to Tor or CSI Gateway. This is only usable if you're using the virtual machine version of CSI Linux. You also have to have downloaded Onex Gateway. So to use this, you would start Onex Gateway, wait for it to boot up, and then click on the gateway here. And then this turns off your first adapter, which has internet access, and then goes to second adapter, which is located on the Onex network, or the virtual Onex network. So it makes it a little bit, so it's basically a backup. So if for whatever reason the Tor VPN is having issues, you can attempt to try it through Onex. If that's still having issues, usually that's related to internet connectivity or Tor is being blocked. But to do the gateway, you have to have Onex installed and running. So of course you have Libreoffice, so you have all the capabilities doing reporting. You have Google, we have Firefox, and the Onion Share. This is the offline wallet. And Keepass. Keepass do use a lot for building sock puppet accounts, and that's going to usually be used to safely and securely store that information. So you can even share that. We are using Keepass XC, so it's cross-platform compatible. So if we have other either CSI Linux we want to share that database with, or even a Windows system, the sock puppet accounts can be stored and shared. The AND box, the Android emulator, we are using, again, quick, easy access to Maltego. The Hunchly tool. So again, as mentioned before, Hunchly is part of Chrome. It's an extension, but this is the main management system for Hunchly. This is the social media search, which is our proprietary tool that does tie into some third-party tools and then has some of our own. We have domain information search, which is just the, again, domain OSINT. So social media, domain OSINT, and dark web investigation. This one is a Windows application, but we are able to use it. It's great for, again, network forensics, does automatic carving of unencrypted traffic, It also has some passive operating system figures built into it. Plus it's graphic, so it looks good in a report. Wireshark. And as far as the forensic side, we do have the bulk extractor and autopsy. So with the starter case, this is our case management system. So at the very top, you have case management, where you can start a case or resume a case. System management. So under CSI Linux, we have the ability to update the entire Linux system or just the tools. In case management, you have the ability to, again, modify APIs, move the case, or edit case agency information. In this section, this is going to be related to your organization. So this is part of what the report's building off of. So we do have a report template that we can use inside the actual investigation. But this is global information. Some of the other stuff is going to be case specific. With Tor, either here, we can do the Tor VPN, we can do the Tor Gateway with Onex, or we can install and run the Tor Browser. To save a little bit of space, because this distribution is constantly evolving, but it's also growing a little bit, a lot of these applications are not fully installed on the system until you run it the first time. Tor Browser being one of them. And the main reason we did this is because we wanted it to stay as up to date as possible. For cryptocurrencies, again, you have Army Wallet, Exodus. This, when you click on it, will install, so it's going to take up a little bit more space, but gives you access to a ton of different cryptocurrencies and online wallet. And of course, the Ledger Search. So first thing I want to do is, let's go and start a case. We're going to do a completely brand new case. So this here is the local information related to the report generator. So the agency information was global. It's going to be on every report. This is unique per specific report. So as mentioned before, if you're using CSI Linux for multiple cases in the same environment, this worked great. If you're using it for an individual case per environment, so you can archive the entire virtual machine as your evidence, it still ties together, but it's all going to be quote-unquote local at that point. So right now, putting in my name, the type of case, let's do demo. Client, do CSI Linux. And the case name, we'll do 123. So case 123. This name is directly related to your agency's naming convention. So however you name it, that's where it goes. Go and hit OK. Now we have access to the social media intelligence, or SOCMINT, domain intel, dark web, and geolocation application, and some of the other applications we're building. So when we're talking about the report, this is going to be directly for the agency information. But since we already have that information built in, and I put in that local information for the case, I'm going to hit Generate Report Template for Case. Go and hit OK. And in the background, it's grabbing the template, and the template's going to be in the Documents folder under Templates, which we'll show in a second. It rips that apart, changes some of the variables inside that template, and replaces them with both the case information and the agency information. So you can modify the template however you want. The template is going to be located in Home, and then Documents, Templates, and this one right here. So opening it up, we can see the generic template. So now to do a quick view of the social media, go and hit OK. This has changed a little bit. We've added a few more things. There's a good possibility by the time you use the tool, there might be a couple more items in here. We have username search, adult website username search, hashtag, looking for phones based off sites, the geolocation, because that dives into a lot of things, and a lot of the tools we were talking about before, but this is also a way to kickstart some of the other tools, like Hidden Eye, Altego, and Spiderfoot. As far as the domain, again, gather domain information is going to getting a lot of subdomain content, trying to dictionary its tack way through possible subdomains, get some other information. It also tries to identify cloud information related to what IP addresses it may have had in the past based off historical documents. Nmap, get links on the page, metagoofil, and this allows you to mirror the page. That's httrack. But all the content, all the files within this and most of the other links within the startup case application, case management, is going to get stored into the case folder, which we'll look at here in just a second. And with dark web investigation, we have, again, working with Tor, the search, the wallets, and sharing content. And for geo, right now, it's looking at, again, SSID of an access point coming from wiggle.net, BSSID, that access point, which is going to be the MAC address or the hardware fingerprint, again, from Wiggle. And IP address, this is coming from a few different resources, but they're also looking at Shodan. And if that IP address does have some vulnerabilities, Shodan's where you're going to get some CVEs, if those vulnerabilities were seen when Shodan was doing the scanning. But again, public information, but you do require APIs to access this data. As far as the mounting forensics image, this actually works with a few different file formats. I think we're talking for about raw DD. Is you can do read-only. You can do case, which is going to be an expert witness format. You can do virtual disk, and the virtual disk is going to essentially cover things like VDIs, VMDKs, QCOW2 formats, some of the major virtual machine formats. And then here we can also do DD or EO1 as read-write, and mount an ISO image. So that is the case management system in a nutshell. When a case is built, it's going to create a case in the cases folder, and the case we just copied or created was case 123. So under the cases 1, 2, 3, we have all these files or folders that do get generated automatically. So anything that the tools do carve data, most of the contents can go into the export folder. Stuff related specifically to social media, like TikTok, things in that area, they will be dumped into social media. And then any file that gets created is going to get hashed every time the case gets closed. So here we have report. So the ODT file is the actual report. You can save this as a DOX file or DOCX, any file format, PDF, things in that area. But as far as default goes, it's just an ODT. So all these files were created. Now, if we go to the case123.md5, open that up, and now we see the MD5 hash of all those files. Also, every time the case closes, you can have an audit log, so that's going to be updated based off whatever was happening within that case. You go up a folder, so every time you close a case, it's going to generate an archive file with a timestamp. And by that archive file with the timestamp, we also have another MD5. So this is hashing everything related to that case. It's doing a lot of backups. So just pay attention if you're doing a lot of cases within CSI Linux. Keep an eye out on the archive folder, because this can grow pretty quick depending on how many cases you do, how much data that you're recording, things in that area. But the reason it's doing that is for the preservation of evidence. Also, if anything goes wrong, you can go back to a previous copy of that evidence and just verify that the MD5s are still matching things in that area. Or worst case scenario, some of the content inside the case gets corrupted. Again, go back to the backup. So all this ties into case management. And in a nutshell, just a reminder, this is based off Ubuntu. Ubuntu's based off Debian distributions. So if you are used to applications like Kali or Parrot Security, it's going to be the same basic back-end interface. If you're trying to install anything, you're going to be using the aptitude. So apt space update, apt space install. With that said, going back to the very beginning, if you type in PowerUp, CSI, now just downloaded. This right here is locked temporarily. Once it's done updating, it will then reset the permission on it, so you're good to go. So this may change over time, especially once new things have been added. We're looking at trying to make this also kind of like a bug tracker, so when things are getting fixed, just let people know certain things have been modified. This does take a few minutes. It is doing an operating system update, the tools update, and then once it is done, it is going to reboot. So you only want to run this when you don't have anything else going on in the system. You update, you can walk away when you come back. Hopefully it's going to be back at the login screen for you. But outside that, if you have any questions, comments, definitely let us know. The easiest way to get in contact with us is going to be support@csilinux.com. So again, if you have any sort of suggestions on how to make the environment better, please let us know. Hope you enjoyed, and happy investigating.